What if I told you there was a movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Tobey Maguire where dramatic incidents are all the rage and character presentations are insanely naturalistic? Inappropriate conversations and controversial attitudes are directed towards patrons of a popular restaurant. Exciting conflicts between characters that accumulate in verbal and physical altercations. Too bad, bozo, you're never gonna see it. Okay, now this isn't entirely true. Such things exist in a film entitled Don's Plum. As it exists now, this film is a heavily edited and internationally released black and white movie blocked from being released by Leo and Toby. Believe me, there is more to this story. I'm not attacking famous actors for not wanting Don's Plum to be released. That is their own business. This is an extremely controversial film to cover due to the lawsuits surrounding it, but what about some other examples? Don't worry, I will be getting back to this film. Of course, this is far from the only film afflicted by the horrid UFD, Unreleased Film Disease. You can't get this, but that new film you're excited to see that's going to be released in a couple of months? At risk. UFD has a few subcategories to it, but the ones I want to talk about are the films that made it through pre-production, made it through filming, and landed in the editing room, but fell just a little bit short from being fully released. There are a few risk factors and causes for this affliction to crop up, from the aforementioned litigation to something as unexpected as funding falling through. Personally, I find it to be a shame when pieces of art fail like this. Everybody, and I mean everybody, from the production assistants to the electricians to the director, spent time and effort on these projects just for them to fall short of the main objective: distribution. The point is this: there are movies that exist which have never been released for various reasons. Let's check out some specific films, when films are considered lost, and explore the mystery of unreleased films. So unreleased films aren't exactly lost films, so when is a film considered to be lost? This is an important question to ask because there's a distinction between a film being held from release and one that doesn't have an existing print, a lost film. So a lost film is basically a movie that lacks any complete copy in a personal collection or any sort of archive. I think the most recent example of a damn near lost film is Toy Story 2. 90% of the film was deleted by an animator, but thankfully technical director Galen Sussman had a backup copy on her home computer. From the 1890s to the 1980s, there have been a ridiculous amount of lost films. I honestly just gave up counting them. This doesn't seem like an uncommon thing for these decades because movies were shot on actual flammable film. From being stolen by German soldiers to intentional destruction to just plain old being misplaced, this happened a lot. Around 75% of all silent films are lost forever, according to an estimation done by the Library of Congress. Thankfully, lost films have been rediscovered, but who knows how many great and influential films we can never see because they, frankly, no longer exist. As far as I know, the 3 films that I'm going to discuss exist. What I mean is that in some shape or form, edits for these films exist somewhere in the world. Lawsuits are incredibly common things when it comes to intellectual property and copyright issues, and the film industry is rife with ideas and no shortage of money to fuel litigation. Especially with wealthy financiers who, with no film background, took a gamble on various film projects. 2 of the 3 films, Don's Plum and Blackwater Transit, are 2 films surrounded by lawsuits and disagreements which permanently hindered the full release of these movies. Although both these films were halted, the lawsuits which prevented the films from being released were actually about 2 very different things. Don's Plum. So this film is actually kind of well known among some people in the film community. Leonardo DiCaprio and Tobey Maguire, both of whom are obviously very well known stars, were relatively unknown up-and-coming actors when they signed on for Don's Plum. Them and Kevin Connolly were part of a loose collection of actors known as the Pussy Posse. Allegedly, these young men were womanizers, they'd pick fights with other people, and didn't tip waitresses. Really sick shit. The basis of Don's Plum was to sort of showcase the exploits of this posse of actors, so the film was largely improvisational on part of the actors, so I'm assuming some of the inappropriate stuff they discussed was encased in some essence of truth. So why would a movie with Leo and Toby containing inappropriate situations and plenty of attitude not be released? You guessed it, lawsuits and actors blocking the film. Leo and Toby had been in movies before Don's Plum. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio even received his first Academy Award nomination only a few years before filming Don's Plum. As their careers began picking up in the late 90s, and they were both receiving consistent work, in 1998, Maguire and DiCaprio launched an alleged coercive campaign to block the film from being released. Producer David Stutman filed a lawsuit against the actors alleging they were carrying out a fraudulent campaign to prevent the release of the film. So there has been speculation that the actors' improvised performances reveal actual personal details and habits about themselves which reflect poorly on them. However, the actors claim that the film was pitched to them as a short film, but edited to be a full-length feature. After this legal battle, there was a settlement stipulating that the film could be released, but only outside of the US and Canada. So from what I can tell, a few good portions of the film have been cut. So even though the film has been released, it didn't perform well in the foreign market. It also isn't the same film that Toby and Leo agreed to make, the director intended on it being, or the movie anybody asked for, which are three different things. Whatever the truth of production or the allegations, co-writer and producer Dale Wheatley published a website where you can watch Don's Plum for free. You have to email him to get the link. So technically the film was released in the international markets, but it doesn't seem like a copy really exists anywhere apart from with Dale Wheatley, who runs the site. It wasn't released on home video or anything like that. I actually had the opportunity to watch Don's Plum via Dale Wheatley, and I gotta say, it's fantastic. The performances were easily the best part for me. The character building from these young actors is just top notch. You don't even see that with some of Leo's most well-known performances. It's delightfully bizarre in its editing, which makes the film extremely creative. The music is fantastic and fitting. I wish more people would have seen this film. If you're interested, go to freedonsplum.com. As mentioned before, another film titled Blackwater Transit was and is involved in a lengthy legal battle. The film was directed by Tony Kaye, who made American History X. I feel like there have been notorious problems with his films in the past. For example, American History X, which I believe to be a very powerful and excellent film, was ensnared in a post-production duel between Edward Norton, the lead actor, and Kaye.
Because Edward Norton, the actor, was permitted by the producers to edit and alter the film!
Initially, the film was 95 minutes long, but the studio wanted more and more edits done. The process was so grueling and angering for Kaye that he tried to remove himself from the credits as director and get the director name changed to Humpty Dumpty. The final cut is 24 minutes longer than Kaye's initial version and assumingly crammed with edits done by both Kaye and Norton. Blackwater Transit is based on a crime novel by Karsten Stroud, and as far as I can tell, the production went rather smoothly. Pre-production and post-production are way different stories from this. Doug Richardson wrote the initial draft of the film, but didn't want to sign on to the project after meeting Kaye, who he deemed to be a lunatic.
Maniac.
Also, producer David Bergstein claimed that the film isn't what they agreed to in the pre-production phase in order to avoid making payments on the film. However, the film was shot in its entirety and moved on to the post-production phase. This is where the real issues began. A few films produced by Bergstein's company were unreleased due to production loans that they defaulted on, Blackwater Transit being one of them. And these loans they defaulted on were supposed to be paid out to Aramid Entertainment Fund, which is a firm that was based out of the Cayman Islands. Right. Something sketchy is obviously going on here. So this litigation it's all super complicated, and I'm nowhere near a finance guy, so I'm not even going to be able to make crystal clear sense out of all this. But what I do understand is that Bergstein and Ron Tudor, who are producers of the film, used $120 million from a hedge fund to acquire Think Film and capital, in addition to other companies to be used for film production. The hedge fund where they got their money was approaching bankruptcy, so the hedge fund filed a suit to be reimbursed their $120 million. Bergstein and Tudor are on the hook for more than $65 million of that. In 2014, Bergstein and Aramid came to an agreement that the rights of the film would revert to Bergstein, pending a bankruptcy court approval. Bergstein then issued a press release regarding a complaint against Aramid former executive David Molnar in 2016 that the repayment of the Blackwater Transit loan depends on the outcome of the litigation. However, in 2018, Bergstein was sentenced to 8 years in prison for fraud. That's not funny, sorry. Basically, this film is caught up in this lengthy legal battle, and it will not get a wide release, even though it premiered at Cannes Film Festival. After Bergstein complained that the film wasn't commercially sensible in the pre-production phase, and that the film wasn't what they agreed on, Kay, as the director, naturally wanted to dispute this, so he showed the film to the lead actor Lawrence Fishburne, who loved it. I mean, the fact that the film was good is obviously not the issue. The issue lies in the fact that Kay has an unsavory reputation, quote, being a lunatic,
maniac,
for being difficult to work with, in addition to the issues stemming from producers Bergstein and Tudor. Even if the film is actually amazing, Kay has such a reputation that it could be difficult to find a distributor for such a film, even after everything fell apart. This next film was surrounded by controversy from beginning to end, in addition to a rights dispute. The film's subject matter, the director and lead actor's personal opinions on the film, and troubles during production and post are why this film never saw the light of day. The Day the Clown Cried. If this film were to have actually come out, it would probably replace, or at least be neck and neck, with Requiem for a Dream as the most depressing movie I've ever seen. Just based on the plot summary, it's sickening and nihilistic. It's basically about a clown sent to Auschwitz who then becomes a kind of Pied Piper leading children to the gas chambers. Before Jerry Lewis agreed to direct and star in the film, Lewis was reluctant to take on the role because he saw himself exclusively as a comedy actor and comedian. It isn't like nowadays where comedians take on dramatic roles quite frequently. After rereading the script, Lewis decided to take on duties as lead actor and director. Production appeared to be a nightmare, honestly. Filming equipment was either lost or delivered to set late, in addition to funding falling through multiple times. Lewis ended up contributing as much as $2 million of his own money to complete production. Joan O'Brien, co-writer and actor, was shown a rough cut but deemed the film unreleasable. Nobody could come to the terms needed to release this work. Lewis's reluctance early on and the hardships of production likely led to Lewis not wanting anybody to see the film once it was completed. He reportedly did not enjoy the final cut of the film, and he felt as though it was an artistic failure. As infamy built around this film, Lewis felt as though the film would need to be as good as Citizen Kane, or just be a piece of shit. Keep in mind this was in 1972, years before Holocaust films became a genre in the mainstream. It had to have been a lot weighing on his mind for him even to consider helming such a project. Unfortunately, the film will likely remain unreleased because O'Brien still owns the rights to the film and nobody has acquired them from her. The Library of Congress has a copy due in part to Lewis not wanting the film to be lost, despite not wanting anybody to ever see it. Even if there weren't legal issues hanging over the film, nobody would be able to see it until the year 2025. Oh well. To me, the history behind unreleased films contains mystery and intrigue. It might just be my own curiosity, but there's always an itch in my brain to watch something that was once considered lost or forgotten. The carrot is dangled right in front of me, but I can never reach it. It's melancholic in some aspects that people spent personal time and a lot of money on these projects just to have them not be released. What bothers me is that there's knowledge that these films exist, but unless somebody uploads it somewhere or purchases the rights for them, these films will never be seen. It's like those people obsessed with Atlantis or the Curse of Oak Island. They exist, I swear! I'm not foaming from the mouth to watch any of these movies, but I would sure like to. There is a film titled The Brave starring and directed by Johnny Depp based on an excellent novel, which is considered unreleased. I will definitely be covering this one at some point in the future, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and see ya.